Welcome everyone to the Fall Prevention Month Advice and Insights from Communication Experts webinar. My name is Shamiza and I'm the Knowledge Coordinator at the Ontario Neurotrauma Foundation, also known as ONF, and I'll be facilitating today's webinar. So ONF sponsors the Fall Prevention Communities of Practice, Loop and Loop Junior, along with the annual Fall Prevention Month campaign. So before we begin, I'd like to just give you a quick rundown of the Zoom meeting platform. Your screen may look a bit different depending on the type of computer that you're using. But if your Zoom application is open in full screen, you can double click or press the escape button on your keyboard to exit full screen. There should also be a button at the top right corner of your screen that says exit full screen, like the one in this image here. The webinar technology does consist of two parts, the audio and visuals, and both are provided through your computer monitor and speakers. To test or adjust your audio settings, look for the audio settings or join audio button at the bottom left corner of your screen. And then this will provide options for testing your computer microphone and speakers. So moving on, if you look to the bottom center of your screen, you'll see these three buttons here that will then allow you to access the chat box, raise hand, and Q&A features. The chat box allows you to send messages to webinar presenters along with other webinar participants. You can use the raise hand button if you want me to connect with you through the chat box, and you can submit questions through the Q&A box right there. So you will be only able to view questions you have asked and not questions posed by other participants when using the Q&A. So to simplify things a little bit, for technical questions, please only use the chat box. So technical questions meaning that you can't hear the presenters, the audio is sounding a little bit off. Use the chat box for that. And for any topic related questions relating to the actual webinar, please use the Q&A box. And as usual, if you need help or if you need to leave the webinar at any time, click the red leave meeting button right here at the bottom right corner of your screen. So if you have any questions, as usual, about the technology at any time during the presentation, please type them into the chat box. My colleague Marguerite and I will be monitoring this. Alternatively, you can email me at shamiza.allard@onf.org, and I will work with you to resolve any of your technical issues. Like all webinars, this one is also being recorded, and a YouTube link will be sent to all participants in about a week, along with the presentation slides. So before we begin, I'd like to now introduce our presenter, Tristan Joseph. Tristan is a senior strategist with the public relations and marketing firm Red Rhino. With over 10 years of experience, she provides strategic solutions for a wide variety of clients, specializing in healthcare communications. For a complete bio of Tristan, please view the Zoom webinar invitation. So before I do turn it over to Tristan, I would just like to give a quick overview of Fall Prevention Month 2020. So Fall Prevention Month is a call to action campaign that encourages Canadian organizations and individuals to come together to deploy Fall Prevention Month efforts in November of every year. And this allows for a coordinated and larger impact. For the first time, this year's campaign will follow a theme, which is Be Ready, Be Steady. So Be Ready, Be Steady focuses on Canadians' role in preventing falls through preparation. So that's the Be Ready component, and acting on known risk factors for both children and older adults. So that's the Be Steady component. Today's webinar will provide more information about this year's theme, communication tips to run a successful Fall Prevention Month campaign, either if it's done through virtually or in person, depending on obviously the ongoing pandemic restrictions. So without further ado, please take it away, Tristan. You may now share your screen.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Shmiza. So hello, everybody, and welcome. Really excited to be presenting today. So I'm just going to get my screen going here. So as Shamiza said, I work with an agency, and primarily I work in healthcare communications. So I work with a number of healthcare organizations, including hospitals, as well as colleges. Really, in most part, is to create awareness so we can motivate action. That's one of the most exciting things that I get to do. So it's wonderful to be speaking to all of you today. And right before I get going, what I want to make sure to say is that while this presentation is in English, it's really important to realize that the website and resources are available in English and French, which is really exciting because very much we want to make this accessible to all Canadians. So I'm just going to skip by. So we've just a quick agenda. So we're going to provide an overview of Fall Prevention Month website and resources, activities, and Shamiza mentioned with COVID-19, it's we need to rethink how we're doing that. So we'll talk about some ways to do that. The importance of social media and media relations, how to reach out to communications departments. That was a request that we received last year. And then we'll open it up for Q&A as well. So as we're going along, if questions occur to you, please, as Shamiza said, use the Q&A function, and I'll be more than happy to answer those as well at the end. And I'll leave as much time as possible. So the first thing that's really exciting is the website and resources. And if you've already been through, then you know how really how thorough this entire website is. And again, available in English and French. And what's available here is also segmented into some very, very specific ways. So you're able to access the activities, promotional materials, and additional resources easily. And again, there's the English version and the French version. They're not exact mirrors of each other because again, English and French, two very different languages, different cultures, different resources. So each site has specific resources for each language. So the About section, I would encourage you to go through this because there's some interesting information here. So about Fall Prevention Month, the leadership and the partners involved, it really is a national campaign. How to get involved, the mailing list, which you'll hear me talking about a few times, a lot of really great activities. Again, this is where you'll see it's very easy to start to look for information. So activities are done by adults. When we talk about adults, we tend to mean older adults and children. And when we talk about children for fall prevention, a lot of the materials can be for many ages, but sometimes when we're talking about children, we're talking about how we speak to their parents about young children. Promotional materials is set up the same way, additional resources. So again, in the English and French version, you can see that level of consistency. Contact is easy to find. And then from any page in a French or English site, you can click on this button and you'll see the same relevant information in either language. And we'll get to Twitter and Facebook in a bit as well, because it's a really, really important part of Fall Prevention Month. So you'll hear me promote this a couple of times, and this is the e-newsletter sign up, and I really want to encourage you to sign up for this e-newsletter if you haven't already. The reason being that more resources are being developed every single day, and the website is being updated accordingly. So as there are new materials, the e-newsletter is going to be sent out to be able to highlight those. It'll also highlight other tips that are going to be helpful for you in planning your activities. So the first section of the website that I wanted to go over is ideas for adults. So this has a number of different activities, from build your own posters, active living, there's education activities for professionals and staff. And what's exciting, we actually have some community-specific content, such as Elders in Motion for Indigenous populations as well, which is an exciting addition this year. And then there's also social activities and games, such as a CSI Clue game. And again, you'll hear me use the word exciting a bunch of times, but there's a new Falls Assistant online game, which is for children as well as older adults. And so you can see here some of the different activities and how it's segmented out. There's a number of things that can be done within the home, and then also things that can be done online, which I'll go into a little bit as well. but there's everything from a reading activity that adults can do with their young children, or parents or guardians rather can do with their young children, to a brain roll demonstration. So children can tactically and visually understand the impact, the literal impact of falls. And then promotional materials. So again, this is really set up in the same way. And I'm not going to go too much into detail, but you'll see here, this is these materials that are available for you to access. And again, this is where it's really important to make sure you sign up for the e-newsletter, because these are being updated all the time. So from a branded media package, which you can also access, has postcards, posters, to a build your own event poster. We received some really great feedback on that last year. It was to make it really easy for you to use. A fact bank, which is being updated with the most up-to-date information available, as well as regional information, which we know is very important for social media as well. That's just really the goal of this, is to make sure that you can access all of these materials easily and download them and customize them the way you need to, but then also have some ready-to-use materials as well. And activities. So activities, this is where we're going to see a lot of changes this year. So COVID-19 has moved many of us online, so Zoom, WebEx, Meet, and more. I'm sure in many of your organizations, if you're able to work from home, this is how most meetings and most interactions are taking place. And certainly that doesn't apply to just the workplace anymore. Many not-for-profits, many events, many activities are moving online as well. And so what I want to talk about is the ways that we can make this accessible. Always understanding, of course, technology access is different for everybody across Canada. So that is something that we understand. But what can we do to make the best out of what we have? So virtual activities can be more accessible in terms of older adults who, one, may not have the mobility or the independence to go out to a community center and attend an event. And it can also be accessible for a parent who's busy at home and has a young child, and same thing, might not be able to travel to attend an event, but can make time for a half-hour event online. So that means promotion has to be adaptable too, to make sure that we're targeting people where they're looking for information right now during COVID-19. And as we know, there will very likely be a second wave, and that's something that we can't predict, but it is something that we can plan for through fall prevention. And I'm going to just take your eye to these 4 little tabs above the desktop computer on the right-hand side. So you'll see the words activity, video, virtual website. So when you're on the fall prevention website, there are these tabs in English and French. And the virtual one is the most important one that I want to draw attention to. You're actually able to look for activities that can be adapted to become virtual. Many of them can be done in person or virtual. So it really gives you a good level of choice and adaptability, because it's nice to just have options. And I think this is, while we're doing this for COVID-19, the exciting thing is this can be even taken, into the following years, when hopefully we're allowed to have activities in person again and interact face to face. So that's one thing that I want to highlight for you. You can actually search for it and filter your activities accordingly. So I really do encourage you to, as soon as you have time after this webinar, to go onto the website and start to look through what is available, and start to look for those tabs and the way you can filter information to find more activities that you can adapt for your own use. So one of the resources I wanted to highlight in English is, and this is again something that certainly you could do face-to-face, but this year might be best to do it online, is a bit of a flash dance mob. And this was done from Fraser Health. and while this is a video, it's produced a little bit, but what I want to show you here is how you could essentially take this and do this online.
So while Tristan's sorting that out, if you guys start having questions, feel free to throw them into the Q&A box while we're sorting that out.
Sorry about that. Looks like I lost my share there. All right, sorry about that. Let me try that one more time. Okay, so as you can see here, this is a falls prevention dance flash mob. So you can see, and I'll just scroll through really quickly, that you can see many of these activities are done in chairs. Some can be done standing. And the way that we would suggest that you adapt this for use in yours, and why don't I go back to the presentation? So just to make things a little bit easier in terms of tactics. Oh, sorry, it doesn't, you know what, I'm gonna probably skip the video for the next one because it doesn't seem to love doing that. So let me try that again. All right, my apologies for this. It's gonna be fun when Shviza has to do the video to share with this. So as I'm just cycling back through that, so really with the flash mob, it's not that we're suggesting by any means with the flash mob that you should cut together a video. That can be very time consuming. But what you can do is recruit for an event. So even if you have 10 people with Zoom or any platform that you want to use, Google Meet, for instance, is wonderful and a free platform, is that sense of community that you get with the flash mob. You can recreate that to some extent online. So being able to, I'm sure you've all been on Zoom calls where you can see everybody in a tile format, talking, laughing, smiling. It's that kind of interaction that we can recreate to some extent online. And that kind of companionship and friendship, which is also very important, especially for older adults, but also for parents with young children who still want to connect with others. So that's one thing that we would recommend. And it's easy to turn this into a series where a few sessions are actually teaching people how to do these activities. Again, activities that can be modified for people who are seated and also people who are standing. And then you'll also see on a French example, and this one is very exciting. It's this Move 50 plus, and it's a lot of different videos. This one I chose specifically the Move sur chaise because it is based on activities, and this is more exercise based from your chair. But that said, the website has, and it is aimed at people who are 50 and over, of course. There are activity levels for anybody on this site, and I believe it was a partnership in a number of different organizations in Quebec, including the provincial government. So this is one of the resources that you can find on the French side of the website, and I would encourage you to access. And I would encourage you to play around and discover because there's so much wonderful content on that website that will lead you to other partner content as well. And so this, as I mentioned, it's really, if you want to bring these people together online, it's really important to promote your activities. And as we said, your promotion needs to be adaptable as well. So on the bottom right, you'll see this is the build your own poster that we developed. It's available again in English and French, and it's a Word template. And the beauty of that is that most people have access to Word. So you can tailor the content in the middle to the name of your event, the time, location, if there are any details for going online through a video or register, that can all be added. In previous years, the goal here was to print it off and then put it in relevant locations. This year, that may still be possible, but it may not always be possible. And where it isn't, the quick way around that is to still design your poster in Word and then take a screenshot. So you can Google instructions if you haven't done that before on how to do that on a PC or a Mac. But it's a really easy way to create a graphic that you can then share on social media. So we encourage you to try that out as well, because again, posters are wonderful. If you can, great, but this is another addition to what you're doing as well. So the other thing that we want to encourage you to do is speak with organizations that can help share your message. And this is a little bit brainstorming, which is exciting. So if there are retirement residences in your community, contact the activities coordinator to see if you can arrange something. Again, they're all in a space. They may not be having as much interaction from outside, given everything with COVID-19. If this is something that you can provide for them with a low technology entry, which it effectively is, especially for retirement residents, this would be a great way to get people aware about fall prevention, especially an activities coordinator who may be able to build a further relationship with you over time. Another way is to create an event on Facebook and invite those on your contact list. So if you have an organization that has a Facebook page, this is, again, zero cost and a really easy way to just invite as many people as possible, from parents of young children, if your event is targeted towards them, to older adults. And often a lot of the events which you'll find are intergenerational events. And I think one of the really exciting things that you could consider is those intergenerational events have always been such a wonderful way to have young kids, their parents and grandparents all involved. So wouldn't it be wonderful to see if you could bring them all online together? It's for grandparents who may not see their grandkids all the time right now with restrictions, this helps break down a barrier. And more, I want you to think about that in terms of how you're planning activities. How can you break down some of the barriers that COVID-19 has put up? So the other one is, if you've got an email list, send out an email blast to your subscribers. And this never needs to be complicated. If you don't have a platform already, you can use platforms like MailChimp for free with a smaller subscriber list, or you can even just create something in your company email and send it out. And again, it's just a matter of, if you want to paste an image like this, the build your own event poster, you can actually just populate it with the information that you need, share it, create that screen capture as we discussed, and put it in your email with a little bit of text information. Again, just make sure it's accessible. But that's how easy promoting your activities can be. And once you get to it, first of all, I'm sure a lot of you have a ton of ideas already on how to promote your event. But once you start thinking about your audience, because you know them best, you'll think of other ways to reach them as well. So one of the other materials is a branded media package. So we have a Fall Prevention Month logo and usage guidelines. And this logo, we really want to make sure that you feel like you can use it. It's there for you to use. So we want to make sure that you are able to download it, you're able to add it to your materials, because it is a recognizable feature. It's something that ties together all of the materials, no matter where they're being used. So that's really the effectiveness of it. And I could do a whole other presentation about the importance of brand, but it really is something that the more it's used, the more credibility your organization gives to it, and vice versa. is that it becomes a recognized event year after year in your community, which is exciting. And then postcards, again, typically postcards could be handed in person, but we also have digital postcards as well that can just be shared through social media or sent through email. And then we've gone through the posters, but that said, there are many posters. There are ones that are already set up for your use, and then there are ones that you can customize as well. So social media, I want to spend a little bit of time here because I imagine there's a lot of questions, and there's a lot to go through. Social media is constantly changing, as you all know. And what I do want to highlight is we are currently working on a number of different tip sheets. This is one of them. So again, if you haven't signed up for the e-newsletter, please do, because this is one that will certainly let you know when this is available. We'll have a sort of a larger guide with every single thing you need to know, but then also just a high level overview for those who have more experience with social media, just some things to keep in mind. So there are many platforms. And when we talk about social media is anything where there's a two-way conversation. So when you think about that, almost everything online has an aspect of that. So from Facebook and Twitter and LinkedIn to Instagram, now TikTok, Reddit, the list goes on. This is by no means close to comprehensive. But what I want to tell you is you don't need to be on all of these at all. You just need to use the platforms that are right for your audience. And what I didn't put here is also use the ones that are right for you. If LinkedIn or TikTok or even Twitter aren't right for you, you don't have to use them. And part of that is understanding who your audience is, and part of that is understanding where the strengths of each platform are. So for instance, Facebook. This is really popular with the sandwich generation. So those parents who have kids, who may be younger, and also who have older parents as well, where they have to take care of their kids, but they also want to be able to support their parents as well as they age, to still be healthy and to still have a connection. They're very much a bridge generation. So Facebook is very popular for that age group, but it's also very popular for older adults, 70 and over, and just becoming more popular. As of last year, I think it was about 60% of Canadian older adults who were 55 plus were on Facebook. So it is a wonderful way to use, it's a wonderful way to reach a number of different sort of middle-aged to older adults. Twitter is most popular with 30 to 50-year-olds. So you can see that's a pretty niche market. And Twitter has some specific strengths, though, which I'll get into as well. Instagram is very popular with preteens. If you have anybody who's 11 or 12, or actually now even 16, sometimes their entry into social media was Instagram a few years ago. And that's really what we call Generation Z. But there are other audiences who are growing. So for instance, their parents. And parents are Generation X, but I also want to make sure you realize they're Generation Y too. So we talk about millennials as if they're younger, but millennials are actually anywhere from 23 years old to 39 years old. So Generation Y is definitely an audience within that sandwich generation. So I want to encourage you to think of that as well, because I think that gets a little bit lost when you talk about millennials, but that's part of who you're targeting as well. So think about Instagram that way. It can be young, but you can reach those parents too. A number of those parents actually joined Instagram because they wanted to monitor their kids. And then TikTok. It's really most popular with Generation Z. So Generation Z is not necessarily in our target market, but it's important to realize that TikTok is, as you know, it's a very visual, very dynamic platform. And if you're on Twitter, you'll notice that TikTok videos that do well on TikTok are now actually being repurposed on Twitter. So they're being repurposed in different ways for a different audience, which is really interesting. And the big thing that I want you to know is tell a story. So everything that you do, from the posters to your social media posts, is all about telling a story. And the story might be visual, the story might be text, but there's always something that you really want to convey and get people excited about. And so this is where I really want to give you some tips about the strengths of each platform. Because as I said, don't feel like you have to use them all. You don't. Often, many of us don't have a lot of resources, so you really want to make the best of what you're able to access. Facebook is great for longer posts, though we do tend to say around 80 words. But if you need to have more explanation, this is where you can. And for older audiences, and by older I mean 40 and up, we're willing to read more, right? So you can also create events and help target audiences. And when I say target audiences, that's a little bit into the paid realm. So, and when we talk about paid advertisements, Facebook is one of the few platforms that I would say, even if you don't have a lot of experience, or if you have no experience with paid advertising online, Facebook, try even putting $20 behind a post. And I'm sure many of you have seen that boost, this post is performing well, boost it for $20. If you have a budget, I would recommend that you try it, because what it allows you to do is to target a very specific audience in your community. So if your event that you're promoting is for parents of children who are between 5 and 11, you might not be able to say parents between 5 and 11, but you can certainly get parents, you can get parents of 1 or 2 children. There is a level of targeting that you can actually use to make sure that your ads are going to that direct audience. And because of the Facebook algorithm, organic is the unpaid, so the posts that you put up every day, but paid advertisements do better, because Facebook does prioritize what your friends and family have to say more than what the organization has to say. So even a small spend like $20 can make a difference. So I would encourage you not to shy away from that. Investigate it and see if that's something that you want to try. Posts with photos and videos perform the best. I would say if you're posting anything on Facebook, it must have an image or a video, and be creative about that image. It doesn't have to be a photograph, doesn't have to be a fancy graphic. It can be a statistic, just in a bit of that you made in Canva, or that you made in Microsoft Publisher. There's any number of easy ways that you can create graphics that are great for Facebook. And then engagement. So I talked about algorithms a little while ago, and that's how Facebook decides what it wants to share and how long things will be. So I'm sure you've seen posts that were 3 days old, or even a week old sometimes on Facebook. And the reason that you're seeing posts that old on Facebook is because they have engagement. And when I talk about engagement, the likes don't matter so much, or what they call reactions now. What matters the most is comments and shares. So, and that's all about reach. So if you want to reach more people, give people a reason to interact with your post. Ask a question, suggest an activity, share interesting information, spark a conversation. Give people a reason to share that post with their friends and family. Give people a reason to respond to and have a discussion. And the most important thing that I want to say, if people are commenting on your post, first, amazing, great job. Second, respond, like their post, say thank you for contributing. Make sure that you interact, because again, social media, two-way conversation. It's great that you put information back out into the world. It's wonderful that people responded, and it's really important that you acknowledge that as well. And then Facebook Live and Stories are interesting ways to engage your audience. So again, this is the place where I want to encourage you to find a way to incorporate this. These don't need to be perfect. They just need to be fun and exciting. And that's something that you also have to judge according to your organization and how that aligns with your brand. But Facebook Live and Stories, because again, the nature of the Facebook algorithm, these can get more traction. And they're so exciting, especially if you're doing online virtual activities. These can be really great. So Facebook Live, for instance, if you have an expert in your organization, you can schedule a Facebook Live Q&A. And the really cool thing about Facebook is everybody who subscribes to your page gets a notification that you're live. And then you can even promote that ahead of time, so people are waiting to tune in. Twitter. So Twitter, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on Twitter. Not that I don't love it, but it does have a very specific place. Text is the most important feature with a 240 character limit. Do remember hashtags, photos, videos do take up some of that limit as well. One call to action is essential because you don't have a lot of room to play with. And I'll be honest, 240 in English is an outer limit. Where possible, the shorter the better, just as long as you're getting your message across. Images and videos can be helpful, but they're not necessary. Twitter is really a conversation, which is usually text-based. If you have videos and statistics, great, share them, but you don't always have to if your message is getting across with just text. It's really great for building relationships with other organizations who have the same interests. So that's one of the key things, which actually I probably should have put that first at the top. This is one of the really wonderful strengths about Twitter. It helps you build relationships, not just with organizations who also want to raise awareness about fault prevention in your community. You can reach across the country. You can reach out into other countries if you want. It's a wonderful place where you can look for other information, access experts, build relationships, share other people's content, and then they can share your content. So again, that's where Twitter is really exciting and really neat. So if you haven't experimented with Twitter before, or if you don't have a strategy for Twitter, I would encourage you to start an account, even if it's just your personal account, and look around for a while. Because that's one of the best ways to learn how to use Twitter. And I'm going to speak about Twitter in French as well, because there's some specific tips about why that's important to understand how Twitter works in your language and who's available as well. And then use Twitter to amplify your message from other platforms. So as I mentioned before, TikTok, for instance, TikTok videos are now showing up on Twitter. And then the second other big thing is hashtags can help you connect with other organizations and help others find you. So if you were part of last year's campaign, you'll remember Prevent Falls was a big hashtag. And this year, one of the other hashtags that we're really excited about is part of our new theme, Be Ready, Be Steady. And this is another material that we're making available to you in a bit as well. It's a hashtag tip sheet. So here are the kinds of hashtags you can use, how to use them, because in English and French it's a little bit different, and how you can connect with others. And with Twitter, we do recommend that you, where possible, just stick to 2 hashtags. Sometimes 3 is fine, but don't, 5 or more is probably a little too much. Twitter, and again, it's an algorithm thing. It's Twitter likes around 2. Twitter doesn't like 5 or more. So Twitter in French. Text is still the most important feature with a 240 character limit. And this is where I'm going to say use the 240 character limit because, not surprisingly, French, usually the equivalent or related phrase in French will be longer in terms of characters. So what's really exciting about French Twitter right now that I love is all of these short forms, which is something that we're more used to in English, not as used to in French because we don't have contractions. So people are actually making up their own contractions, for lack of a better word, in French. So this is where, if you're not involved with French Twitter, start following a lot of people who are French or are bilingual, so you can see how French is being used because it's really exciting. And then hashtags, another way to help organizations find you. With Twitter in French, there are a couple things that I want to, we actually have 3. The reason we have 3 is because the Be Ready, Be Steady is a nice, it's under a certain limit, whereas if we put Soyez prêts and restez en équilibre as one hashtag, it would be too long for Twitter. So we've actually split them up here, and I'm going to talk about how you can use those too. The other really important thing to learn to know about French and Twitter is accents can be used, but they're considered different letters. So E with accent grave, U accent aigu, those are all different for Twitter. So if you're searching for something and someone didn't use an accent, you may not find it. And so that's why with the hashtags, and you'll see this, that if you're a French speaker, or even if you're someone who just appreciates the French language, it's difficult to kind of get over it. But that's why you can see there are no accents in the hashtags, and that is just for consistency, because otherwise people are more likely to not use the accents rather than to use the accent. And so it's just a method of making sure that people are able to use a consistent hashtag, so we're able to find that easily. And so in terms of hashtag tips, again, be ready, be steady, or soyez prêt, restez en équilibre. They're the theme hashtags this year. So, and the way we want you to think about that, and again, there'll be a tip sheet for the theme as well, is practitioners can help older adults and parents of young children to be ready, or soyez prêt. So when you're constructing a tweet, think about that. Is this, is what I'm putting in this tweet about helping people be ready? And if it is, that's a great hashtag to use. And by helping people be ready, be prepared, that means older adults and young kids can be steady on their feet. Rester en équilibre. So that's, again, where we want to use that hashtag. So be creative with your hashtag use. In French, if you want to use all 3 hashtags, please do. Definitely not going to stop you. And Twitter isn't going to have an issue with that in terms of algorithms as well. Instagram. Instagram is probably one of the easiest ones of all. Visuals. That's the whole point of Instagram. And again, as I said, visuals can be anything from photographs to illustrations to statistics. And videos do extremely well on Instagram. And I'm going to show you in a minute a way that you can use that. And this is where, if you love hashtags, you can use up to 30 hashtags. 30 hashtags help more people find you, and help you find other content to share as well. So Instagram is, and in terms of culture, Instagram is where you have fun. So I want to encourage you to think about that. So if Instagram is something that you choose to use, and again, you do not have to if it's not the right platform, don't be afraid to have a little bit of fun with it, because it is a visual platform. You don't want to be too serious. And so one of the examples that I do want to show you, and just really quickly, and I'm going to encourage you to go on Instagram and take a look, is at the real Debbie Allen. So if you're not familiar, I was a big dancer in my youth. I love Debbie Allen. She has her own Instagram channel where she teaches people how to dance. So you'll see in the bottom middle, there's Instagram Live. She promotes her upcoming dance instruction videos, so people know when to tune in and watch her. And the great thing about this is you don't need to download a platform like Zoom. You just need to have an Instagram account, which is as easy as having a Facebook account. So it's, again, another way to engage people, and people can leave comments. The other thing that she does in addition to teaching people how to dance is shares videos of her audiences as well. So I know we've got, gonna have to speed through things because I think I spent too much time on Facebook, but I want to talk about media relations. And the big thing that I want to say about media relations is it's easier than you think it is. And it's really, the big thing is like, make things easy for the journalists that you're speaking with. And when you're thinking about local media, that's everything from radio stations, newspapers, television, and websites. Don't always be focused on getting television. That can be the hardest one to get. Radio stations have news sections and talk shows as well, and they can sometimes be your best partners. So I really encourage you to make a broad media list of who you can reach out into your community and start building those relationships, because it really is a relationship that you can rely on over time. I've made some wonderful relationships, and they are business relationships with journalists, which means when they're looking for content, they may come back to you. And good news stories can be really difficult to find. So everything that we have to share is a good news story and something interesting for them. So the more great content that's newsworthy, share it. And again, of course, there's very little in terms of investment, which is great. The investment of your time, which is important, but no payment for that, which is great. Again, online, what you'll be able to access and in more detail is media release tips, media release templates, so you have a format to follow, and then examples of past articles from Marguerite as well. Fall Prevention Month has had some excellent coverage. So I want to encourage you to read those examples once we have them up, because that will give you an idea of what you can actually do and what's newsworthy. So some tips before you start is unify your voice. Select one expert from your organization to speak to the media if the media reach out. Clarify your goals. Are you trying to raise awareness? Are you trying to get registration for an event? Understand your subject matter. So if you're have research or something very technical, just make sure that you know where you got that information from, because reporters will ask. And then think about your audience. So the big thing that I want you to think about there is, if your audience is older adults, or if your audience is the parents of young children, well, which media outlets do they tend to go to? Doesn't mean you only need to target that one, but it's also really important that when you're speaking to media, you understand who their audience is, because it needs to be relevant for them as well. And then optimize your timing. The big reason we included that as part of our tips is, yes, it's important in general, but also November, Remembrance Day falls on November 11th. And we would strongly recommend that you not approach media for anything that's happening a few days before or 1 to 2 days after. And partly that's a show of respect. And then also it is just because of the nature of the news cycle. Remembrance Day does take about a week before and after as a whole. So in terms of optimizing your timing, we would recommend that you not focus on that. So tips for writing, and the reporter is only going to read the first paragraph. So I say assume that, because 90% of the time is what will happen. They'll read the first paragraph, and then if they want to pick it up, they'll call you and ask you about the rest. So make sure that first paragraph is really exciting. Make sure you answer the 5 W's. So if they do read the rest of the media release, everything they need to know needs to be there. Be clear about why your message is relevant to their audience. They shouldn't have to guess, and they won't guess. So you need to give them that information. And as I said, make it easy. So identify opportunities for video, photos, and interviews. Make sure you realize that even if it's a radio station, radio stations have websites. So everything you pitch, make sure you're thinking, what's the audio opportunity? What's the photo opportunity? What's the video opportunity? So some examples, and this is really relevant for this year, you want to think about relevancy. This year, how's COVID-19 impacted older adults and children? So people who are restricted to their homes or residences experience deconditioning, which can impact their risk of falls. It's more clutter and hazards at home if children are being homeschooled. They're not out of the house for really long periods of time as they may have been before. They're not able to attend outside events and activities as much as they were before. And then communications department, and I'm apologizing because I'm speeding through this a bit, as you can tell, but I want to make sure we still have Q&A time. This was a request that we got of how to engage communications departments. And this is a tip sheet as well that you'll have access to. So don't feel like you have to take really detailed notes, because all of this information with more detail will be available to you. Make sure you do your research, and that's just making sure that, and this, I want you to think about this almost the way that you would pitch a reporter is, well, you're pitching fall prevention to your communications department. Why should they care? How is it aligned with your organization's mandate and mission? Make it really easy for them to see the connection. And then practice your pitch, of course. Ask early. So give it a few months to start a conversation, because they may need time to get permissions from decision makers and executives within your organization. And be specific. Say, you know what, this is what I'm hoping that you'll do, but I'm really happy to discuss other options as well. Be flexible, because as you'll see from the website, it's a lot of different options. make it easy, of course, just like you would with a journalist, put everything in one place. They don't have to go searching, and say thank you to them, because this might not be something that they've got in their strategy. It might be outside of what they had been planning to do. So just say thank you for participating. It's also just a great internal way to say thank you to your colleagues in general. And then circle back. So if you've got great metrics, if you've got great attendance, tell them. Because as a communicator, I love success. I love numbers. And if you tell me that I helped you earn, get a great donation, or that an event exceeded the numbers, I'm nothing but happy, and I want to help you out again. So it's really important for this year, but also even for next year, so that's circling back. And one final plug for the e-newsletter sign up. So it's on the homepage. You just scroll all the way to the bottom, or you can go to fallpreventionmonth.ca/sign up. And then I'm going to finish it there so we can have a few minutes for Q&A.
Okay, so we could just leave it on the slide as we're going to be entering Q&A now. So thank you, Tristan, for such an insightful presentation about running a Fall Prevention Month campaign and really sharing your communications knowledge with us. I'm sure everybody is very grateful for that. So we did have a few participants submit their questions in the Q&A throughout the presentation. So we'll go through those now. So also participants, if you want to add some more in, feel free to do so. We have about 9 minutes left, so plenty of time to go through that. So Tristan, if you wanted to open up the box, we can start going through some of those.
Perfect.
So I see, while you're doing that, I'll get started. So one of the first questions that we had was, what are the hashtag for social media? If you wanted to maybe go over that slide again.
Perfect. So the hashtags for social media, oh, actually just popped off my screen. Let me go back to that.
Oh, they were right there even.
They're right there. Here. Yeah. So it's a perfect question, perfect time. So in English, the hashtags are prevent falls and be ready, be steady, all one word. So one of the things I didn't mention with hashtags, no punctuation and no spaces, because that will break your hashtag. And then in French, you have 3. You can use them all together, or you can use them separately, is prévention des chutes. I would encourage that to be in everything. And then soyez prêts, and then restez en équipe. And for the French speakers out there, my apologies for my French accent. It's been a while. And if you are on Instagram, use all of them.
Great. So moving on, so you'll see that this one is in the second tab, Tristan, and it's just essentially how to communicate fall prevention messaging to older adults and the individual rights. For example, evidence about how to frame the messaging to enhance uptake among older adults and what communication vehicles to use.
Sure, that's a really great question. So I'd say in terms of, first of all, when you're thinking about your older adults, the first question is, where are your older adults? So if you have older adults who are, at home, mostly independent, and you want to get them involved, Facebook is a great way to do that. So I would encourage you to do that. And the nice thing about Facebook is when you're putting out your message, doesn't just have to be about the older parents. So that's who you should target it towards. Also think, you know what, maybe their kids will see this and pass the message on to them so they can think about if they want to become involved. It's always about those secondary audiences. While very much in communications, we always think about secondary audiences. This is who we really want to get, but you know what? These people can influence those people. Obviously with kids, the parents have a great deal of influence, so it's a little bit easier. And then I would say when you have older adults who may be in a long-term care or maybe living in a retirement residence, that's very much when it's really great to have a conversation with their activities coordinator. And that's really where start that conversation early, because we don't know what's going to come this fall. So, but that conversation is going to give you a little bit of insight into how, and maybe you already know, maybe you're working with a retirement residence already or a long-term care center, but those conversations will help you understand what what access they have. And the other thing that I would definitely encourage you to do is don't forget about mobile phones. So when I talk about Facebook, if you're just thinking desktop, not at all. Older adults, most older adults, 70, 80, 90, have mobile phones too. So make sure when you're thinking about advertising, you're thinking about how's this going to look on advertising or email, any of that. And emails are still super important. So I would recommend that for older adults as well. If you've got an email list, don't forget about how that message can be shared and how it will look on mobile, because mobile is very important for older adults.
Great. So the next question that we have is, so basically at one point in the presentation, you were sharing some stats, Canadian stats about social media use. So an individual asks, will you be able to share the links that have the Canadian stats about social media use by age? That they've tried to look for this information in the past and they were unable to find that. If you have any links that you'd be willing to share.
Oh yeah, I'd love to. And I can share a few, and you know what, you're right. It is difficult to find statistics, and it's difficult to find relevant statistics that are up to date. Some of the best Canadian statistics are by Pew Internet Research in the States. They actually do have some Canadian research, so I'll be happy to share any links that we have. And sadly, I'll have to caution you, we may not have everything for 2020. I will share some statistics as well that are healthcare related. They are primarily American, but they're relevant for healthcare and social media and how people get information. And the numbers that you're seeing in the States are probably higher in Canada. Generally, we have a higher uptake with social media than the US.
Okay. And another question that we have is, how many media posts within a month period is optimal?
So are we talking about social media posts?
I'm assuming if the individual wants to clarify, but I just see media posts.
Yeah.
Social media posts, yes.
So with social media posts, a lot of that is going to be dependent on your audience. And it's going to depend, definitely it's going to depend on your platform. If it's Facebook, you do not need to post every day. And I would encourage you not to, again, because we were talking about that algorithm. Things need time to actually gain traction. So if you posted in the morning on Facebook and you post again in the evening, your evening post is going to cut off your engagement for your morning post. So on Facebook, realistically, you probably only need to post anywhere from 2 to 4 times a week, but you're going to find that rhythm that works for you. And Facebook has free statistics on the back end that you can look for. So again, that's a place where play around for a few minutes and see what kind of data you can pull on your audience. Twitter, really at least post once a day, but to be honest, the more you post on Twitter, the better. Just make sure it's not all in one go. If you could spend 10 minutes on Twitter a day, just putting out a few, 2 to 3 posts and retweeting a couple of more posts, you're great. Doesn't need to be every single day, but if you can have some sort of regularity to it on Twitter, that's wonderful. Instagram is much more flexible. If you just have a few that you want to put out a week or 1 or 2, great. If you somehow are amazing and have content for every single day of the week, go for it. There's no algorithms to say what would be bad, but I would just say, make sure it's something that you can do consistently. Don't push yourself to do 10 posts in 10 days if you know you can't keep that up long term. It's all about being consistent and being true to what you actually have the resources to accomplish.
Okay, so we have 2 more questions, but I did want to point everyone, Marguerite did provide a little bit more information to an earlier question about, messaging for older adults. So feel free to take a look at the chat box, everyone. She has provided some more information there. And so we have about a minute left and we have 2 more questions. So we're going to try to breeze through them, but we may go just a minute over. As an FYI. So the one question is, how would you best suggest reaching the French-speaking populations of a community when you do not have any French and or bilingual members who are able to translate messaging? So this is referring predominantly on social media and Facebook and Twitter.
I'm going to say that's going to be very difficult. The reason being, and I'll be honest, I use the word translation too, but I don't really mean it because best practices for English to French, and specifically when we're talking about French, we're talking about Québécois, is that you never really want to translate because they don't translate well. It's really about taking the theme, taking the purpose of the message in English, and then having someone write the same purpose and theme in French. It's never a direct translation, because direct translations from English to French can be hilarious and are never really correct. So I would say that you need to develop some partnerships who are French speaking, because I think from what I know of, and anyone who is Quebecois, it is a different culture, and it's respect, right? It's the same thing if you went to an audience. I mean, French is a different level because it's one of our official languages, but if you went to an Indigenous community, you'd want to make sure you're speaking to the Indigenous community in a way that they want, and in a way that they've asked for. And so the same thing in if you're speaking to Quebecois, you want to make sure that the way you're speaking to them is the way that they want, the way that they expect. So I've got to be honest, that's a really tricky one. I wouldn't mind giving a little bit more thought to it, but my initial reaction is make a partnership that is a French organization, and see if you can partner there. So you are providing relevant resources in their preferred language.
Great. So I hope that's insightful for that individual who asked that. And then I know it's 101, but we have one final question, so we can try to do the full stretch. So the individual writes, I'm a PSW in an assisted living program that provides service to seniors living independently or with family. Very few of our clients have access to social media. Visit times are also time sensitive. Will this webinar help those of us who don't have a lot of time to spend on social media? So I know we were at the end of the webinar, but Tristan, if you have any type of tips with respect to that.
And I think that's a really important question. If you don't have a lot of time for social media, that's okay. I think there's two things that you need to ask yourself and one of them you've already said, if your current audience that you really need to reach isn't on social media, then and you don't have time, no problem, because that doesn't make sense for you to spend time there. I'll give you an example. My sister is a dentist. She's like, do I need to be on Facebook? Do I need to be on Twitter? I don't have time. The answer was, you don't have time? No, don't worry about it. Because there are other ways and especially if your audience isn't there, don't do it. So I would say in that place, it might be more tactile. It might be more posters in your location. Obviously with COVID-19, handouts are, people are being much more cautious about those. Those aren't being distributed as much. But if there are things that you can put in place within your facility when people are coming in, or it's just conversations. It's just opening up that dialogue with the people that you're working with and being able to provide the information that's most relevant. And so that's where I would say is, while social media is a great two-way conversation, face-to-face or over the phone, however you're interacting with people, use that. Nothing is ever going to beat that, to be honest, a one-on-one conversation.
Excellent. So that concludes our webinar. Thank you all. Thank you, Tristan, first of all, and thank you to all of our participants for joining in and engaging in this great discussion. So for more information, I've just put some links in the chat box, but for more information about the Fall Prevention Month campaign, visit www.fallpreventionmonth.ca. And when the webinar has ended, you'll be redirected to Zoom and you'll be invited to participate in a short evaluation survey. So, if you have some time, we'd appreciate you providing some feedback through this survey so we can continue to offer webinars such as these. So again, that leaves us at the end of our webinar. Stay tuned for the recording and the slide deck in a few days. So thank you all and hope you all have a wonderful day. Thanks again.